Welcome class to your lecture video for Chapter 6, Positioning Objects with CSS and Tables. In Chapter 6 we are going to cover the objectives, create a page using a fluid grid layout, add and position divs, add content to divs, create a table, resize, split and merge cells, insert and align images in table cells, insert text and format cell content. So the first part of the video will be really about the fluid grid layout and adding and positioning divs and adding content to divs, and then the last part will be about tables. And so to start off, I want you to notice in the assignments page that there is a zip folder, and in this zip folder you will need to open and copy each individual file to the appropriate website. So in this zip folder, Cafe is going to be your striped umbrella file. Catalog is going to be for TripSmart. CSS template will be for Coffee Shop, and then workshops will be for your Blooms website. So again, striped umbrella, TripSmart, Coffee Shop, and Blooms. And so you'll want to copy those individual files to your root folders in order to complete the fluid grid layout, and I'll explain that here in a second. So CSS page layouts, they consist of containers formatted with CSS rules to which we place our content in them. And that content could be text, it could be an image, it could be a movie, or any really other thing that you would put in that container. And in CSS we call those boxes. And so we have been working with this type of layout, this fluid grid layout, all the way through the semester. We started off with having a fluid grid layout. What we're going to learn in this chapter is a little bit more detail about how that fluid grid layout actually functions. So the appearance and position of the containers are set through HTML tags, and they are called div tags. You may have noticed some of these, or maybe I've sent you some corrections that you need to use with div tags, but the classes that are assigned to these div tags is actually what makes it the fluid grid layout. Tables, they are placeholders made up of small boxes called cells into which you can insert text and graphics, and so again that'll be the second half of this video. Cells in a table are arranged horizontally in rows and vertically in columns. So we don't use tables anymore to lay out pages, and we haven't done that for a very, very long time, but we will use it to hold tabular type of data. You can create dynamic div tags using JavaScript behaviors. If you hover over something, then a box appears, or maybe when you hover over something, something disappears on the page, and that's JavaScript behaviors. The type of div tag that Dreamweaver refers to it is called an AP div tag, and AP stands for absolutely positioned div tag. You don't really need to know the absolute position CSS behind it, but just know that that's what we're working with. Because building a web page using div tags can be tedious for beginners, Dreamweaver created what we call a fluid grid layout. Now, what we'll see in our current version of Creative Cloud is that we no longer have this through the new document dialog box. That is why I've supplied that zip file to you, and I'll talk about the pages you need to skip. So this is what the document dialog box used to look like, and I think back in like Creative Cloud 2015, 2016, this was an option for us. So we would go File on the menu and then to New, and then you would have these options. And today, again, I'm supplying that those files to you. So fluid grid layouts, and we've seen this as we have used our CSS Designers panel, that we have mobile or global type of styles, tablet, and then desktop. Each device size is based on a grid system similar to column guides, and so there's a little bit of math behind it, but we don't need to worry about that because it's already been tailored for us. A designer can design a single page but modify the way the content is displayed by changing the style sheet properties through our media queries. So global again for the mobile, tablet for tablet, and desktop for desktop. A fluid grid layout contains divs that control the placement of page content using placeholders. So when we insert a div or insert a footer or a header or a nav, we're going to see that we have what placeholder text, and then we're going to go ahead and remove that and replace it with our own content. When you use the Dreamweaver Fluid Grid layout, you can be sure that your pages will appear with a consistent design when viewed in all browsers and all device sizes. Now, you just want to make sure that your media queries are corresponding correctly. And for our results, we don't need to mess with what is set up. As you design your page layouts using div tags, you can use Design View to see and adjust those CSS content blocks. So you may have noticed this, these dotted line borders. So whenever you click on something and you get this is a div. And if you look down in your tag selector, you're going to see the classes that are being applied to that. So let's look at pages 6 through 7. And what we have here is in our assignment directions, it says pages 6 and 7, download Caffe using the zip file above and give the page a title. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to copy this. And again, you can do this step right away. Take all of these and put them in their individual root folders. So I'm just going to replace that blank Caffe file. And now when I open up Caffe, it looks like this. Okay, so we have a background, and that's coming from our CSS file, SU styles. And again, this is the file that I supplied for you. So let's go ahead and look at the code. So if I would have gone File, New, and went to Fluid Grid Layout, this is exactly what is created. So it's no different. It's just that we don't have that option anymore. So here we're going to be modifying and adding containers, okay, divs, footers, navs, inside of the class grid container ClearFix. So when you use Fluid Grid Layout style sheets to design new websites, you can move from a long, complicated page code to much shorter code because the bulk of the code moved from the HTML page itself to the style sheet. So to add a new page into your website, you can save an existing page with a new file name and replace the content with new content. This essentially creates a template for your site, and that's number 2. You could create a file called template.html, and that's the file that you always modify or use to create new documents. This last one, really we don't have this with Fluid Grid Layouts because we don't have the option anymore. Every new blank page by default has one div called Grid Container ClearFix. So here we have the class Grid Container ClearFix. Let's go find it in the style sheet so that we can see that grid container. So here's Grid Container, and then let's see if we can find the ClearFix as well. And maybe there's not even a style for it. Let's see if I can just do a... And there isn't. So maybe at one point in time we had a style that said ClearFix on it, and maybe now that's been modified. So let's see if later on, let's go ahead and remove this class and actually see if it still functions the same way. So pages, again, 6 and 7 you do not complete. Now we're going to continue on and we're going to add in some more absolutely positioned types of divs. So we want to make sure that when we do that, we insert everything between this div tag and this closing div tag. Okay, so be very careful in your directions exactly where it is telling you to position it. It's also very important that we need to have the class of fluid on our divs, and that is something that we have practiced when we are working with menus. After you have used div tags to create divs, you can rearrange and resize the divs on the page. You can use the DOM panel to see how things are structured as well. DOM stands for the Document Object Model. It's a convention that represents the order and type of elements used in a web page. And so I guess I thought I updated this. We are going to use the DOM panel to allow you to view what used to be called the Element Quick View button. Okay, so we're using the DOM panel. Here is the DOM panel. I actually updated this. So here's a DOM panel, and we can see body, and then we have the div grid container clear fix. Then we can see div content, ID content, class fluid, header, then nav and div, and then within that div we have another div which then has a table in it, and then it has all of our table items. So you can see how the structure is nested, and it's just create a graphical hierarchy of how our web page is structured. So it looks like a pages 11 through 15. So on page 11, it has us start with renaming this div from div 1 to content. Now I'm going to use split view so that I can see my changes as I go through. I'll just pull this up here a little bit. So that's number 2. And then we get into number 3. It says in code view, select the placeholder text in the content div. So placeholder text is going to be what's in black, and it's what's between the opening tag and the closing tag, and they want us to delete it. Okay, so now you notice the placeholder text is not there anymore in the design view. Okay, and then it says within the insertion, with the insertion point between the opening and closing div tag, so where it is flashing right now, we want to insert a header. So we're going to click on header, and in the class name here, make sure that you always prefix with fluid header underscore div. Okay, so now we have a header, and we have a banner right off from the start, because in our SU styles file we say anything that with header underscore div from tablet down gets this banner. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the placeholder text because we don't want that to be displayed where it was. Page 12. Now we are going to look at the DOM panel. So as I look over here, I can see that I have body, I have div, and within that I have a div called content, because that's the one I renamed, and then I have my header that I just inserted. And if I want, I can use the plus symbol over here to allow me to move things around as well. Okay, page 13, add a new div and paste the menu bar into it. So change to split view is direction number 1. If you find it easier to read through your code with spaces separating each div, add a paragraph in code view. So they want us to, number 1, to put the insertion point after the closing header tag. And then in number 2, we're going to insert a div with fluid intro underscore paragraph. And click OK. And these are all instructions that are on your assignments page as well. Then it says you want to skip step 3 there because we don't have the fluid grid layout guides in our current version of Creative Cloud. And number 4 on page 13 says to open up the index page. Let's see here, I want to make sure. I know that we're going to delete this content, so I'm just not sure exactly what instruction it is. So we're going to delete that content. Files panel, go to the index page, and here we're going to copy our navigation. So you do not need the paragraph tag before it or after it, so just nav tag to nav tag. We'll go ahead and copy, and then back into Caffe we are going to paste and then copy the code for the menu bar, and they actually say the P tags, but I say you don't need them. You're going to insert it right after the header tag. So right here. And if you want to be nice and neat with your indentation, over in your code toolbar over here, if you click on the customize toolbar, it'll allow you to get into the indenting and outdenting of code. And so I have indent code and outdent code. And now I'm going to use this to indent. I'm going to indent it one more time. And then this one, I'm just going to tab over to get that to line up. So header, and actually this one actually should be pushed out, but in line with header. I'm not sure why it's tabbing in so far. Okay, so just make sure that you do not insert your nav within the div fluid intro paragraph. Now let's go ahead and check out our navigation and see if there's anything. Yep. So if you lose your navigation, you're going to have to toggle between live view and design view. I can see in live view here that I do not have the same font as I do over here in the index page. So when I look at the instructions on page 15, it tells me how to go about and fix that. Okay, so let's hold off with that. I'm going to continue down page 14. So we've got the nav in place, and then in number 6, it placed the insertion point before the last two ending div tags. So after your fluid intro paragraph closing div, and then click on footer. And again, we're going to put fluid in here and footer underscore div. Okay, so now we have a footer at the very bottom, and notice that it's formatted the same way that my index page is. So if I were to jump over here and look at my footer, it's formatted the same way. So eventually we'll copy the content over for that footer as well. Okay, stepping into number 8 on page 15, place the insertion point in front of footer. And I'm going to go ahead and enter down, and then we're going to go ahead and insert a div. And that div is fluid image underscore div. So eventually this one will have an image in it. Okay, so number 10, this is where we come back to our menu bar. You notice the menu is no longer formatted with the correct font. This is because when you created this page, the tags for the menu bar selector were above the div for the intro paragraph selector, so the menu bar selector does not have a font family. So if we were to look at index, you're going to see that the reason that our menu bar over here has a nice font is because it's nested within fluid intro paragraph. Okay, and so I guess you could move it and not do the steps on page 15. Doesn't really matter to me. But I'm going to go ahead and complete the steps on page 15. So the CSS Designers panel, SU Styles, and then Global, and then Menu Bar. And I'm just going to add a font. That's all I'm going to do. So a font, and that is Segoe. It's the very last one right there. And now when I look behind here, I see that I have now the same font. So if you want to stay consistent, you can move the nav within fluid intro paragraph. You can move your nav outside of fluid intro paragraph in all of your pages. It doesn't really matter to me, just as long as the menu is the same. Jumping back, adding content to CSS layout blocks. So now we've got all of our layout blocks in here. So we have our navigation, we have an image div, we have a footer as well, and of course we also have the header here at the top. So now we're just going to start adding content to those different boxes. Comments, if you see comments in web pages, in CSS specifically, they will start with a / and an asterisk. This notation tells the browser to skip over those lines of code. Okay, so let's go ahead and complete our fluid grid layout section. Pages 18 through 21. So with the Café page open in Design View, delete the placeholder text in the intro paragraph div. Okay, I already did that. Okay, so that content is already gone. Open the File Manager program, open the file cafe.txt from the drive, and then copy and paste and then throw some paragraph tags around it. So let's open up Cafe. So wherever your data files are at, chapter 6. We're going to go ahead and copy this content, paste it within this, and I'm actually going to go P tag first, and then I'm going to paste it in. Put it down on its own line. There we go. So now I have some text in that intro paragraph container. Then we're going to copy the text for the footer. So when I go back to my index page and I scroll down and I find the footer information, notice that it says div class fluid footer underscore div. So instead of using the footer tag, they used a div. Well, all we need is this span to span tag. We want to copy this content and paste it within our footer section. So over our placeholder content, this black content right there, replace that with this. So when I scroll down, it's the same information that I had here. Okay, now my next step is to get the image within the image div here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the placeholder content again, and I'm going to insert an image. And that image, again in your data files, Clubhouse Oceanside. Give it some alternate text either through your properties panel or right here in the code. So I'm going to put in the Clubhouse Oceanside. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy that into my title area as well. And then the code adjusts. You can skip pages 20 and 21. Okay, so skip pages 20 and 21. And now we are done with the fluid grid layout section. Now, I want to point out that your hands-on final option, you know that it's like roughly 8 weeks away, is this example. Okay, so you'll be given a file and you will need to go through and do exactly what we just did here in the first half of this video. Okay, create a table. So we're going to add a table into this page as well. Tables are great when you need to present data. Okay, so some sort of data that needs to be offered to us. And in our example, it's the times of the day that this clubhouse is open. So to create a table, we're going to click on a table button, and we're going to use the HTML category on the insert panel. Your table width can be specified in pixels or as a percentage. If you want it to be a responsive type of table, you're going to definitely use a percentage. Okay, the table width expands to fill up its container, the browser window, or the container that it's sitting in. And so we're going to add some styling, and I'll explain that as we go along. Setting table widths as percentages works best with fluid grid layouts because, again, we're responding to the user and as to what device they're coming to us in. To align a table on a page or within a CSS layout box, use the float property in the box category. We're actually going to use a width property that's going to help us align our table. Cell padding and cell spacing. Cell padding is the distance between our content and the cell wall. Cell spacing is the distance between the cells. You make a table more accessible by giving it a table caption so that it can be read through their screen reader. Table headers are another way to provide information or accessibility for the table. And we'll see the table headers options that we have. They are automatically centered and bolded content. Okay, so anytime we do a table header, automatically centered and bolded. So here is our table dialog box. So how many rows and how many columns we want, the table width. Border thickness, if we want a border, we have a pixel amount here. Cell padding and cell spacing. Here's your header information. So we can have no table headers. Down the leftmost column, topmost row, or both of those options. And then you have the caption option as well for accessibility. Summary you can do as well for accessibility, giving it a summary of what the table information is about. So let's look at pages 24 and 25, where we're going to start and set up our table. So we first need to have a container, and this is probably going to be the most frustrating part of this chapter, okay? Just because it visually doesn't always appear the way that we believe that it should appear. So it says place the insertion point in the intro paragraph div, okay? Switch to code view and then place the insertion point after the ending div tag. Okay, so before your fluid image div, and then we're going to create a new div, and we're going to go fluid table underscore div. Okay, so now we have a new one with content in it. So we're going to go ahead and remove that placeholder content and insert a table. So we're going to set it up as 5 and 3, and you're going to use the figure 31 on page 24 to do all of this. And then top, and then the caption, the sand, crab, cafe, hours. So tabular data. Make sure that you do not have a border on any of the tables that you create. Okay? No table width at all. So by default, you'll probably come in here and this will say 200, and then border thickness will be 1. I do not want to see either of those values. Okay, so no borders, okay, and no table width. Then we'll go ahead and click OK. Now, we see this. We do have a table, okay, but we haven't set up any rules with regards to that table yet. So here's the caption. Okay, I'm in live view. When I go to design view, I see here is my table, and I also see that here is my table cells. So again, frustrating because we don't have any data in there yet, so it's not really adjusting. It's adjusting correctly. It's just not the way that maybe we thought it would appear. So on page 25, we go ahead and set up a new style, SU Styles Global, and we're doing table because that's our table tag. And we're going to set up the width as 80%. So now when we look behind, now we've got a table that's 80%. Looks a lot better. We're going to change the display from inline to block. Margin left, auto. And margin right, auto. And now that is going to center my table. So I got 10% on one side, 10% on the other side because my table is taking up 80%. And then my last thing is my font family of the last one here. Okay, so all of my text within my table is going to have that font as well, centered, block, and width of 80%. Now we're going to learn how to resize and split some of these cells. So sometimes you want to adjust the cells by simply splitting them into more than one cell, multiple rows or columns, or merge the cells to combine 3 cells into, say, 1 cell. When formatting a table, it's important to understand the basic HTML tags. So to create the table, it's table. Row is tr. Table data, they are td. And table header cells are th. And remember, these are automatically centered and bolded. Dreamweaver places the NBSP code in each empty table cell at the time it creates it. It does this so that that table cell does not collapse when displayed in a browser. So pages 28 and 29. So very carefully you need to read through these directions so that you are grabbing the right cells. Okay, so it says place the insertion point inside the first cell in the last row. So first cell in the last row is this one. Then it says select the split cell into rows or columns button in the Property Inspector. So in my Properties Inspector, where I have it at the bottom of my page, I see rows and columns. Okay, if I have and selected two table cells, I don't even have that option. I can't split two cells at one time, but I could merge them. So when I'm inside of a table cell, I can go ahead and split it. And then it gives me the option rows or columns. In this case, we want 2 rows. And so now that one cell is split into 2 rows, and now these 2 adjacent cells just take up more space. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and merge on page 29. Place the insertion point in the first cell in the top row and then select all 3 cells. And we're going to merge them together to make one large cell. When we look at the code, we see th call span equal 3 because it's going over 3 columns, and the scope is a column. When we look at what we did here in the bottom, we have a table, no, I'm sorry, trying to think of which row this is. So this is row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5. Okay, so it's a little different code than what I kind of expected it to be. Different. Okay, so row span for those 2 cells, oh no, this is exactly the way it needs to be. I'm just not thinking correctly. So this table cell is this one is this one, and this one is this one. So still part of that particular row, and then this last one is this one right here. So these 2 on here have a row span of 2, row span of 2. Okay, because they're spanning over 2 rows. This one is spanning over 3 columns. Okay, and again, NBSP to make sure that our cell does not collapse. So we are going to insert images, we are going to type in content, and we're going to be very careful about the directions so that we make sure that we do it exactly the way it needs to be done. You can insert images into cells. When you add a large image to a cell, the cell expands to accommodate that inserted image. So you want to be very careful on the size of your images, or add a CSS style that will control the size of that image. You can align images both horizontally and vertical within a cell. With HTML5, it's best to align an image by creating a CSS rule with alignment options. Then apply that rule to the image content. So we're going to insert shrimp bisque in our merged cell. Another way to align content in table cells is to add a style to the individual cell tag that sets the cell alignment. So you can do it to an individual content within that cell, or to the entire cell. Okay, and we'll make sure that we do that as we go along. So pages 32 and 33, we're going to bring in our shrimp bisque. Oh, did I skip a step? I skipped a step back here because I don't have a merged cell. Number 4 on page 29. Number 4 on page 29 says select 2, 3, 4, and 5 and merge. There we go. So your layout should be as that. Now to page 32, we're going to insert an image into this cell. So our shrimp bisque. And now as we start to insert cell data, you're going to see that the table starts to behave kind of erratically at points. You can always click outside of the table cell, and then you will see things adjust. So once you put content in and it doesn't look correctly to you and it's bothering you, click outside of the table and then it should adjust correctly. Okay, so here is our image. Let's go ahead and select the image and give it some alternate text. Golf, shrimp, bisque. Did I spell it right? Yep. So we have alternate text and title on there. And then we're going to add in a CSS style for this image. So with the image still selected, and you can do this for any element within a web page, have that element selected, make sure you're in the correct style sheet, that you're in the correct media, and then click on add. It will grab where that context is. And in this case, we want to target the image, only the image that is within the TD, which is within a table row. So now we're going to enter in a width of 80%. Notice the image changes. Images are by default inline images, and we want this to behave like a block, which kind of behaves like a paragraph. And then we're going to go ahead and center it using margin left and right of auto. Okay, so now we have a centered image within that table cell. Inserting text and formatting cell content. You can enter text in a table by typing it, by copying and pasting it from another source, or even importing it from another program. To format the contents of a cell, you can again apply that style to the cell contents, or you can apply it just to the content itself. Okay, so either to the table cell or to the content itself. If a cell contains multiple objects of the same type, such as text, you can format each item individually by applying different CSS rules to each one. So again, to the entire cell or to the individual text items that's within that table cell. Formatting a cell is different from formatting a cell's content. Formatting a cell includes setting properties that visually enhance the cell's appearance, such as setting a cell width or even assigning a background color. You can format a cell with code that is HTML5 compliant. Use tags to define a column such as call group, which will format all cells in a particular column. You can also use the column tag to apply formatting styles to singular cells. So to finish off, we've got pages 35 through 41. So a little bit of typing and really a great attention to detail of the instructions. So place the insertion point in the cell below bisque. Okay, so make sure you do not put it in the same cell as the image. And then golf, shrimp, shift enter to do a line feed. Again, shift enter to do a line feed, and then type bisque. And then we're going to put in our text here for the heading. Notice it's automatically centered and bolded. And then we're going to enter in all of the text here that's in figure 41. And again, notice the table adjusts based on what kind of content we have in it. And again, this looks really strange at this point. I click outside my table and now it adjusts. Okay, that is all of your text. Okay, number 3 on page 35 says to merge these last two cells, and then we'll type in that text. So room service is available. Shift enter. Click outside of the table, and now I have a table that looks like figure 41. Okay, just paused to kind of appreciate that when you click outside the table, things change. Now we're going to format our cell content using a class called feature item. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to SU styles. So feature item. We've got a text color. Font family. If you do not see Lobster 2 in your list, click on Manage Fonts, find it, and then go ahead and select it from your list. So Lobster 2, and then we need to go ahead and change this to italic. The font weight is 400 and the font size is large. Okay, so that's all for our feature item class. Okay, number 3, select Golf Shrimp Bisque. Under the Bisque image, select the CSS button on the Properties Inspector and apply the feature item rule. Okay, listen closely to this. I do not want you to do this. Okay, I want you to select the table cell. So how do we do that? Come down to the tag selector and click on TD. Okay, down to the table selector, click on TD, and then come over to class on your Properties Inspector, and then come to feature item. Okay, that is the best way, and so when you're doing Blooms and TripSmart, do the same practice. Do not select the content, select the cell, and then apply the class that they want you to apply. Now we're going to modify feature item by changing a couple, or updating some adding some properties. So width to 25%, and we want text align, am I here in the right category? And then add the text align center property. So text align center. And now we have our update. Page 38, modify table text for different device sizes. So I'm going to modify the directions a little bit on page 38. You're welcome to follow them exactly as they are, or you can follow my modifications. So it says to copy the table selector code. So this code that we created here. Okay, and we're going to apply it to, so this is for global, and they want it to take us into tablet and then into desktop. So really all we need to do as we read the directions, it says paste it to both in a tablet and desktop. And then it says global table selector font size to small. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right away. I'm going to make my text size small from medium. Okay, so now global is updated. Then as I read through the directions, it says edit the desktop table selector to change the font size to medium. So I really don't need anything in tablet at all because it's going to inherit the same font size and other styles from global. So all I really need to do is update the font size for desktop. So I'm going to go to global. I'm going to come down to table. I'm going to right click on it and go to copy all styles. And then I'm going to go to desktop and I'm going to click on add. I'm going to put in table, and then I'm going to right click and paste my styles into that. So now when I look at show set, I have all of the same things, and then I'm going to go ahead and update this to medium. And to be 100% honest with you, this is the only style that I need. So I could honestly trash this one, trash this one, and trash the font family because they're all inherited from global, and the only one that I'm updating is the medium on the font size. Okay, again, you can follow the instructions exactly like they are in the book, or you can try my modification. Okay, last couple things here. Page 39, it says place the insertion point after the word bisque in the bottom cell. So this is the bottom cell. This really looks like the bottom cell, but it's not. This is the very last cell, and if you look at the code, this is the very last cell. So I'm going to click on tab, And it's just like in Microsoft Word. If you hit the tab key in the last cell, it's going to create a new row. So we're going to merge these two cells, and then we're going to insert a horizontal rule into this. So kind of like a divider on the page. It's in the HTML category, and we're going to click on horizontal rule. Then before the heading, we're going to insert a horizontal rule too. So when I look at this in live view, this down and look, I now have a dividing line before it and dividing line after it. It looks pretty nice. 40 has you go ahead and check all of the views to see how it looks. So let's go ahead and try that. So let's go iPhone 6. Looks pretty good. Okay, and then tablet, I don't have anything really set up for that. So that's not wide enough. So tablet, maybe you could go here and then go to full size for your desktop. Make sure that you have given your page a page title for each and every one of these files that I gave you through the zip file. So I'm going to go back to my design view. I'm going to click outside, and I'm going to see that I have an untitled document. So page 40 gives us our page title, the striped umbrella. Sand Crab Cafe. So make sure that you do that for Bloom's, TripSmart, and Coffee Shop. Otherwise you'll be docked points. Page 41 talks about validation. So if I want to validate this file, when you do a save, you're going to get this, and I know you've gotten this before, update web font script tag. This is because of that Lobster 2 font. If you don't get this, you need to make sure that the link is in your head section. Okay, and that link is right there within the head section. So when it says Lobster 2. Okay, so to validate, I come through the File menu, go to Validate, and then Current Document W3C. And validation allows us to just make sure that we have done everything, you know, in a recommended way. So this one, if my web design students, I would make them fix this, and I would probably make them fix this as well. So if you receive something that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. I'm not going to require you to validate your files. That is your chapter 6. It's kind of exciting, I think. All the modifications are here for Striped Umbrella, and then for Bloom's as well. Again, make sure that you give your page a title. Okay, don't lose points just for that. Okay. Kind of going down through, make sure that you always use the word fluid in front of all of your divs or headers or footers that you're inserting. Number 4, under create a table for Bloom's, it says create a table with 6 rows instead of 5. Okay, it just goes smoother that way. And then when you merge them, you're going to merge 2 through 6. And then catalog, again, prefix with fluid. When they refer to BB styles on 22, they're really referring to TripSmart styles. And then number 38, you could add in centering if you wanted. And if you don't know how to do that, all you have to do is give me an email and I'll help you through that. Coffee Shop, download the CS template.html file and then start to insert your content. Insert your boxes, your divs, your headers as you go through. So just like we did here inside the chapter, and then start to create a brand new page. Okay, refer to your wireframe or your storyboard actually to go about creating that new page. Chapters 5 and 6 test is also here as well. I'm going to go ahead and open this up so everybody will be able to see this as well. And again, if you have any questions, please let me know. This chapter is a full 2 weeks. And so again, questions, just let me know. Thank you.